So the new trailer for The Mandalorian and Grogu is finally here. And for a Star Wars movie, you'd expect the internet to basically, break, right? But instead of this huge wave of excitement, it's been more like a ripple. A very, very small ripple. So what is going on? Let's dig into why this trailer, which should have been a slam dunk, is getting such a lukewarm reaction.
I mean, this really brings up a huge question, doesn't it? Is Lucasfilm staring down a real hype emergency? A lot of people are starting to wonder if this trailer drop was even planned, or was it a panic move, an attempt to fix some big mistakes they've already made? Is the excitement for this movie kind of fizzling out before it even gets a chance?
Okay, so if you just glance at the YouTube numbers, you might be thinking, what's the problem? I mean, look at that. 54,000 likes versus only 2,700 dislikes. Most studios would be thrilled with that ratio. But here's the thing. Those numbers are hiding the real story. When you actually look at the comments, the articles, the general vibe online, it's just tepid. It's a collective shrug from a fan base that should be absolutely losing its mind right now.
So to really get what's happening with this trailer, we kind of have to rewind a little bit, because this didn't just happen out of nowhere. A lot of critics are pointing to let's just say, a pretty botched marketing rollout that really set a bad tone from the very beginning.
Yeah, a lot of folks are calling this a textbook example of bungled marketing. And what does that mean? Well, it's basically when your promotional campaign is handled so poorly that it ends up hurting the very thing you're trying to sell. And in this case, it seems like a string of really questionable decisions created this negative cloud before the new trailer even had a shot.
Let's just walk through the timeline, because it's pretty telling. It all starts back in early February with the Super Bowl. They ran a commercial, and it was a disaster. In fact, analysts figured out it was literally the worst performing movie ad of the entire game. Ouch. And then get this. Just 9 days later, bam, the full trailer just drops online. No warning, no build-up. The timing makes it look an awful lot like a damage control move, a desperate attempt to clean up the mess from the Super Bowl.
And that really gets to the heart of the problem, right? The whole release just felt panicked. You know the drill for a big movie like this. There's usually a countdown, teasers for the teaser, all that stuff. The whole hype machine gets going. We got none of that. And for a lot of people watching, that just screamed that something was wrong. It felt like they didn't really have a plan.
Okay, so the marketing was a mess. We've established that. But what about the trailer itself? Let's forget the release strategy for a second and just dive into the actual content, because a lot of the other problems people have are right there in the footage.
So, what are people actually complaining about? Well, the biggest one, by far, is that it just feels like another episode of the TV show. It doesn't feel cinematic, There's nothing in there that makes you think, wow, I have to see this on a giant screen. It's just a bunch of short scenes, a couple of jokes, but there's no sense of a big, compelling story. And what's really frustrating for a lot of fans is that they know a better trailer exists. There was this epic trailer shown at a Star Wars Celebration event that apparently was amazing, and it still hasn't been released to the public. Why?
Beyond that general feeling of meh, there's one really specific complaint that keeps coming up over and over, and it's all about our main guy, Mando himself, or more specifically, his face.
This quote is pretty funny, but it honestly hits the nail on the head. The whole point of this character, his entire identity, that this is the way creed, is that he never, ever takes his helmet off in front of people. So when the trailer shows him with this, perfectly groomed facial hair, it just kind of breaks the whole illusion, right? It makes you ask these distracting questions and completely pulls you out of the story. It's a small thing, maybe, but it undermines the very core of who he is.
Now, to be fair, it's not all bad. The trailer does have some cool little hints of new stuff. There's this mysterious new character who might be a Force mentor for Grogu, but not a Jedi, kind of like the Bendu from the Rebels series, which could be really interesting. But at the same time, it leans super heavily on old stuff we've seen before. We got Huts, a place that looks an awful lot like Dagobah, even some fight scenes that feel pulled right out of the comics. So it's this mix of new and old, but the big question is it an exciting mix? And this all leads us to a much bigger and maybe more worrying conversation. Because this isn't really just about one trailer, is it? It's about the general buzz around Star Wars as a whole, and some pretty clear signs that that buzz might be starting to fade.
Part of the issue here is the baggage from the show itself. A lot of people were pretty disappointed with Season 3 of The Mandalorian. They felt like it kind of sidelined Mando, the plot was all over the place, it just lost its way. So for those fans, this movie feels less like an exciting new chapter and more like an attempt to revive something that's already lost its magic.
The pressure on this film to win those people back is just massive. And that really sums it all up, doesn't it? I mean, seriously, think about it. If I told you 10 years ago that a brand new Star Wars movie trailer would drop and the reaction would basically be a collective yawn, you'd think I was crazy. The fact that we're even having this discussion shows you just how far the brand has fallen from the absolute center of pop culture.
So, okay, we've got a messed up marketing rollout and a trailer that landed with a thud. Where does Lucasfilm even go from here? Because the clock is ticking and that release date is getting closer and closer.
Well, with the movie coming out on May 22nd, they probably only have time for one more trailer. That's it. One final shot to build the hype and convince everyone that this is a must-see movie event. The pressure on that final trailer is now absolutely astronomical. It has to do all the heavy lifting that this first one completely failed to do. And that leaves us with the ultimate question, doesn't it? The success or failure of this movie really feels like a major test for the entire Star Wars franchise. Can The Mandalorian and Grogu pull itself out of this nosedive and get the fans excited again? Or are we actually watching the moment the galaxy's excitement for Star Wars starts to fade, maybe for good?